Let's discuss something very serious as far as family decisions are concerned. Since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, 10,000 COVID-19 related deaths have occurred just in the Cape Town metro. This past week alone, this puts it into context for you, this past week alone 500 burials were recorded. The municipality is now urging residents to try and find what they call alternative ways of laying loved ones to rest. And such a difficult conversation to have. Mayoral Committee Member for Community Services and Health, Mr. Zahid Badroodien, joining us. And this is such a bizarre conversation to have. We should never have to have this conversation, should we, Zahid? But here we are, and what are we asking community members at what I think could be the most tragic moments of a family's life?
Yeah, absolutely. I think losing a loved one, family member, is a very sensitive time in any family's experience, I would say. And in the city of Cape Town, we recognize that. And from the very beginning, in terms of the first wave of the pandemic, we've been engaging with religious leaders, undertakers, in order to ensure that the city is able to cope with the demand in terms of burials, but also to make sure that residents are sensitized to the expectations in terms of us needing to be able to cope with the rapid increase that was projected at the very early on, which we have managed to do very successfully up until now.
Just for family members who may have just lost a loved one, I mean, the numbers in the Cape Town metro, 500 in the last week. It's a very serious reality, not just in Cape Town, around the country. Family members watching now, they want to try and comply as best they can while dealing with this trauma. What are you asking them to do if they were to lose a loved one? What are you asking them to address? What are you asking them to plan for?
So as we planned from the beginning of the lockdown, we expanded a number of our active cemeteries to be able to cope with the demand. Up until now, our systems, our facilities have held very strong. We've been able to accommodate the increase in burials. In terms of the third wave, we're well below the numbers that we saw in our second wave, about 2,000 roughly needing to be buried a month as compared to 2,500 in the second wave. So we're appealing in terms of good governance, future planning, because we know land is scarce when it comes to cemeteries. We're asking families where they're able to consider alternative forms of burials, like cremations, like mausoleum use, to consider to do so. And we've seen that in terms of cremation specifically, there has been an increase in the number of people wanting to access that service, which is encouraging because it allows our cemeteries in the city to last much longer than what it normally would have, especially considering all the work that has already been undertaken to accommodate the increased deaths, which we've not yet thankfully seen.
How are we hoping that this is going to, in a long term, Zahid? Because obviously no one knows when COVID-19 is going to end. We seem to be on the back end of the third wave. There's now hopefully the experts are wrong, but I know they won't be, an expectation of a fourth wave. Is this putting a plaster over the situation, or do you think this could be something that's enforceable going forward long term?
It definitely is a long-term conversation with our communities across the city. We've already started to invest and investigate the potential of an additional cremator facility within the city of Cape Town. That's in advanced stages at the moment. It says to me that there's a willingness that the city has to provide these facilities for communities to access. But I also don't want to alarm our residents in the city. We can cope with the burials at the moment. But what we also know is, as I've said, land is very scarce, and it's the balance between cemetery space and land for housing. And you can imagine that we were able to compromise, meet each other in terms of accessing the alternative forms of burial. We will definitely do so. We know that there are some religions and cultures that don't allow for cremation, and we understand that. I appreciate that fully. And so we'll never encourage that. But we're saying where you're able to make use of private graves, bury additional additional family members where it's possible to do so, please consider that as an option. Please consider cremations as an option. Please also consider our mausoleum facility as an option that allows families to safely visit, safely mourn their loved ones that have passed as well. So in the city of Cape Town, we're very well on track to ensure that we have enough capacity to cope with our burials. We've said from the very beginning we want to avoid mass burials at whatever cost, that which we saw in New York and India and other cities at the beginning of the pandemic. We're not anywhere close to that. But we're saying in order for us to avoid that, we've got to work together. Our residents and the city of Cape Town will continue to make those facilities available to respectfully say their goodbyes to their loved ones, especially now in this pandemic.
It's changed the whole world, hasn't it? Even how we say goodbye to our loved ones in their final moments and their final resting place. It's such a difficult conversation. Zahid, thank you, and also in the incredible way you're handling such a sensitive issue. Zahid Badroodien, a Mayoral Committee Member for Community Services and Health, joining us here on ENCA.